I'm going to be more knowledgeable next week than I was this week. I'm going to be in a better position to lead myself and lead others next year than I am now. Today should be the worst that I'll ever be moving forward.
Yoo-hoo! Yeah, you know who it is, baby. It's time to rise and shine, and I have some massive big news today. Before we get to the episode with Ryan Hawk talking leadership and lead, follow, get out of the way, I've got some huge news that I need to share today, because today is the first day that we're launching the Get Your Mind Right book launch team. And I want to invite all of you fire-breathing dragons, all of you mind-right maniacs who are ready to run through a wall and overcome this pandemic, overcome coronavirus and COVID-19, I want you part of my team. And it's called your Get Your Mind Right launch team. Now, here's what you got to do. Go to todddurkin.com/launch. todddurkin.com/launch after you listen to the podcast, of course, and I want you to sign up. Now, when you sign up, here's what happens. You get a free Get Your Mind Right hardcover Get Your Mind Right book. Yeah. Now, it's reserved for the first 200 people. So if we have 500 people who sign up, it's reserved for the first 200 people. And if you live outside the U.S., you do not get the hardcover book, but you do get a digital copy of the book. As a matter of fact, everyone on the launch team, and I want the most positive, energetic folks on the launch team, everyone gets a digital copy of the book. First 200, again, get the hard copy. You also get into a private Facebook group with yours truly, where for the next 5 to 6 weeks, we are going to be giving some and then some bonuses. And I can't wait for that. We're going to have a little Zoom party inside of there, because when June 2nd, 2020 hits and Get Your Mind Right comes out to the world, we want to start a crusade, a positivity pandemic that infiltrates across the globe. So go to todddurkin.com/launch, todddurkin.com/launch. Make sure you sign up this week. Don't delay. I want you, all of the most inspiring, energetic, positive people around the planet on my team. So sign up today. Enjoy today's episode. You're really going to love Ryan Hawk and my conversation and interview. It's all on leadership. And right now, I believe the best leaders are rising up to the occasion. And that means you. Folks, enjoy the episode. And don't forget, go to todddurkin.com/launch and be part of my Get Your Mind Right launch team. Rock and roll, baby. Let's go out to the interview now. Welcome back to another episode of the Todd Durkin Impact Show. This is Todd Durkin, and this is leadership. We are talking leadership today. And let me just share a quote with you. Don't ever think you've ever arrived. Foster the mindset that you're always becoming. It's all about the climb, right? It's about the climb of where you're going, about embracing the process. And I believe leadership is one of the most difficult, challenging things that any one of us can do. Whether it's as a parent leading your family, whether it's in your business, regardless of your title or role, leading so that you can continue to grow, so that we can prosper more and ultimately create more impact. So I want to talk about leadership today. Now, in 20 years of leading my company, Fitness Quest 10, we now have 42 teammates. Leadership is one of the more challenging things I do. Is how do you attract, hire, keep, and lead and grow people to be the best that they can possibly be? So today I'm bringing on my friend Ryan Hawk. And Ryan just wrote a book called Welcome to Management, How to Grow from Top Performer to Excellent Leader. And Ryan's a lifelong student of leadership. He rose to roles as a professional quarterback and a VP of sales at a multi-billion-dollar company. And he currently is the head of Brixey Meyer's leadership advisory practice. He speaks to Fortune 500 companies. He works with players and teams in the NFL, NBA, the NCAA, and he facilitates leadership circles that offer structured guidance and collaborative feedback to new and experienced leaders. Most importantly, Ryan, who played quarterback at Miami University in Ohio, played with Ben Roethlisberger. You're in for a real treat today, because he is a leader and he's leading leaders. And this is a topic that I absolutely love. So let's go out to Fitness Quest 10 right now and let's listen to Ryan Hawk talk about leadership. Ryan Hawk, welcome to the show, brother.
Todd, thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. And today we're talking about leadership. And I know you have sunk a lot of time, effort, and energy into leadership. You're an athlete in college. In the last umpteen years, you've been spending a lot of time in leadership. Matter of fact, you just came out with a book, Welcome to Management, How to Grow from Top Performer to Excellent Leader. Tell me about the transition, Ryan, from an athlete now into leading leaders.
Well, it's funny, Todd. I actually thought it would be a smoother one than it was, and it turns out that leading 10 other guys in a huddle as their quarterback is actually not the same as leading a group of people in the business world, and so I had to learn the hard way by making far too many mistakes in that regard that. It wasn't exactly the same. And so fortunately I was able to learn, but I feel a little bit for the people who I was leading on that initial team. And that's the reason I specifically chose to focus on that time in my life when I made the leap from individual contributor in a sales environment, which is where I worked, to then be the first management role, because I think that's the biggest leap you can make in your career. And I've also made the leap from managing individuals to then managing and leading leaders. And that's certainly hard as well, but it actually, to me, wasn't quite as challenging as making that initial leap. And so that's why I focused on that and thinking about how to do that more effectively, do it better than I initially did, and decided to invest years of my life writing a book for people who are in that position.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, as a quarterback, was it University of Miami at Ohio, correct?
Miami University in the Mid-American Conference is where I went to out of high school. Yeah.
Before I jump right into leadership in the business world, as a quarterback there, you had the opportunity to play around the same time as Roethlisberger, correct?
Exact same time, actually. Yeah, we're the exact same age. We got there at the same time. We were in the same freshman class together.
Okay. So as a quarterback, he's a quarterback, obviously, what he's done in the NFL now. If you spent a lot of time as a backup, what lessons did you learn leadership wise from not only from Ben, because obviously he's a phenomenal athlete, but just from your experience as a backup? What mindset and what leadership did that teach you now looking back from the leadership perspective?
I think how it's helped me is that when you're in that role, you have to prepare as if you are the starter and be ready to go in at any moment's notice, ice cold, and be there to perform for your teammates. And so I think that was a good lesson where there's a great chance that you're not going to play. You're not going to be much of a provider, at least on the field, for your teammates, but you might. And everyone's going to depend on you to be ready to go at any moment's notice because you're one play away. And that's what they'd always say to us, as well as you have to support the guy who's actually in, which is very hard in a room full of alphas who all want to be the guy. When the coach determines that someone else is actually better than you, one, it's a huge hit to a fragile 19-year-old ego.
Yep.
That really puts you in your place. But I think for me, it was a great, great moment of learning how to deal with adversity at a young age, when up to that point, I hadn't dealt with much of it yet because I'd been the starting quarterback on every team I'd been on since the second grade, including my freshman year in high school on the varsity team. So I never got beaten out for any job that I wanted in any sport until that moment, my sophomore year at Miami University, when Coach, the late great Terry Hepner, officially said that Ben was going to be the guy and I was not.
And this is, by the way, folks, in Ohio. Now, Ohio is like quarterback country, Western PA and Ohio. A lot of quarterbacks come out of that area. And, in having the opportunity to play with a guy like Roethlisberger, what would you say from a leadership perspective? What would be one thing that Ben did as a starter or as a leader, as a teammate in college?
Yeah.
What's one thing that you think that would you like to share?
So the first game that we played in together was at the Big House at University of Michigan. And one of the quickest ways to earn respect of your teammates, especially the older guys when you're the young quarterback, is to simply make plays. As Todd, you know as well as anybody, that can quickly earn you the respect of your peers, is if you, by your actions and your behaviors, can help the team win. And Ben established himself very quickly that he was the best player on the field from the first game that he had played, including if you look at all 22 guys were on the field, 11 from Miami, 11 from Michigan. It was evident that Ben was better than all of the other 21 guys, which is hard to say from the Mid-American Conference going to the Big Ten. So I would say what I learned is sometimes your performance and overperformance can trump everything. And in the business world, perhaps that's your competence or your intellectual curiosity could help win the day. But on the football field, it's getting results, and it's making it happen, and it's making plays against other great athletes who are also trying to make plays. And Ben always has had that in spades.
Yeah. Ryan, I applaud you because being a backup isn't easy. I had a similar story at William & Mary, right? Playing at William & Mary, you go in there as all everything, and you gotta bide your time until you eventually, hopefully, get the opportunity. I had Chase Daniel on this podcast a while back, and Chase is a 12-year NFL backup. And you've got to prepare like the starter every time, and it's not easy, and everyone thinks, oh, it's the best job in the world to carry a clipboard. But deep down, man, everyone wants to be a starter. Everyone wants to be the man. Everyone wants to, to be out there competing. What would you say now in leading a company and being a leader and teaching on leadership? What would be the one lesson now, looking back, that you smile and say thank you and have gratitude because of the resiliency that you've had in your career? What's the one lesson now that being a backup then helps you with now?
Well, I think it's useful at a young age in your formative years to learn that sometimes you can do everything within your power, and it's still not enough.
Amen.
It's still not enough. And that's life. And so whenever now as a father, when you hear the phrase, that's not fair, that's something that it's good to learn early on. Like, I could have sat in the corner and cried and said, it's not fair that Ben and I happen to be the same age and that he turned down a scholarship from Ohio State and came to Miami instead. But really it's one of the most, I feel extremely lucky to have the opportunity to have competed with the greatest athlete in the history of a school for 2 whole years on a daily basis. And so what I've learned is not to be afraid to compete. I've learned that I can go up against someone who's world-class at what they do and be right there next to them and have an opportunity to compete and not be afraid to lose. You're going to lose. If you choose to do anything of significance in your life, there are going to be moments when you lose. And it's not necessarily about losing. It's about how you choose to respond when you do lose. And that's one of the biggest messages I try to share from stage. Like, we cannot be afraid to compete. We can't be afraid to lose. We've got to be ready.
Preach.
To how we choose to respond when we do. Because if you are never losing, if you're always like it's a win every time, that means you're not stretching enough. You're not trying hard enough. You're not going for ambitious enough goals. And I think I learned that early on in my life, even though I hated moments of it at the time when I was immature and cocky and arrogant. But I learned a lot from it now, looking back on those memories.
Yeah. I think when you're going through a tough stretch, I think it's crucial that we surround ourselves with great people. Even as leaders, you always got to have your inner circle real tight. Now, I know one of your brothers has played in the NFL for a long time. What did he say to you during this time where you as a college player was probably struggling? Did he ever give you any words of just uplifting words that kept your mind in the game, that kept your head straight?
So I loved Miami so much that I was given 2 choices by the late great Terry Hepner: I either be the backup or move to receiver. And I didn't like either of those options. However, I probably would have just moved to receiver if it were not for my brother AJ and my dad and my high school coach. They kind of sat me down, at least on the phone. They sat me down and said, "You're a quarterback. You're good enough to be a Division I starting quarterback. We think you should transfer." And I'm really glad they did because without that nudge or that push, I would have stayed probably at Miami with all of my friends because I love the school and I love the place so much. And because of them, that's why I ended up transferring to Ohio University. And that gave me the opportunity to compete again with an incumbent starter. but was able to win the starting quarterback job where then I was elected captain and started for 2 years. And so if it weren't for the pushing of my younger brother, AJ, and my dad, my high school coach, Ron Allery, I probably wouldn't have gone. And they, though, pushed me and urged me to do it. And it was very uncomfortable, and it wasn't fun at all at the beginning of that because I had to re-earn respect from a place that is a big rival of Miami. That's Ohio University in the same conference. And it took time and effort, but certainly worth it. And I'm very happy that's ultimately what happened.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story, because one thing on that, Ryan, is I think when you look at backups sometimes those are the guys and gals that go on into great leadership roles.
Yeah.
Some of the best coaches in the world today were backups. They weren't big enough, they weren't strong enough, they weren't fast enough, or they just were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it didn't work out for them. But now, as coaches, as leaders, they're leading incredible companies or incredible organizations or teams on that. And I know what you're doing now is a huge part of because of how you grew up and what you had to be steadfast through and the resiliency that you had in that time. So I just want to applaud you for that. And if you're a guy or gal who is struggling today with anything and the chips aren't falling the way you want, man, you got to stay strong. You got to keep working your tail off, just like Ryan did. To make sure you keep climbing the ranks, because now Ryan, head of Brixey and Meyer's leadership advisory practice, you're speaking to Fortune 500 companies. You just wrote a book. You're doing amazing things. And I want to fast forward to today, many years later, because you are in a major leadership role now and you're influencing people massively, right? So how would you define that now? How would you define leadership now in what you do? What's leadership?
I think leadership is caring deeply about people and lifting them to levels that they perhaps didn't think were possible, and pouring everything I have into them, and focusing on the fact that if my constant thought is figuring out ways to help others be successful over the long term, we all will be better off. And that's what I believe, because I immediately, Todd, think back to the leaders who have impacted me the most, and then I deconstruct what were their actions, what did they do, and I think of a guy like Ron Allery, one of my coaches, who got more out of me than I thought I had, because he was willing to. He knew when to. He's a master psychologist of understanding when to push, when to pull back, when to question me. Right? When to empower me to help create my own goals. He understood all of that. And the only way you're able to do that is if you deeply get to know your people. You obviously have to care about them in a big way, and understand that every person's a little bit different. And he treated us as individuals, yet we were on a team. And I think I try to do the same with people I get to know. And that's really what leadership is all about to me, is getting to know each person on a deep level, understanding what makes them tick, and then figuring out ways to lift them to levels that perhaps maybe they didn't even think they were capable of.
I love that. I love it. I want to jump even deeper with that. When it comes to leadership, I believe the best organizations in the world have the ability to attract, hire, and keep great people. Right? As a matter of fact, that's probably one of the most common questions I get is, hey, how do you hire great people? How do you keep great people? Oh, everyone at Fitness Quest 10, they're so awesome. How do you do that? I want to ask you, Ryan, on building your team and leading your team. I really want to focus today on that. Talk to me about first building your team. How do you advise and lead companies to build a great winning culture, organization, and team?
Yeah. Well, first, Todd, I love the way that you put it, because sometimes I find that people don't put enough emphasis or focus on the importance of that. And I was talking with Jim Collins, author of Good to Great, Great by Choice, Built to Last, and he kind of stopped me in my tracks when I was recording a podcast episode with him. And he said, Ryan, you're talking a lot about the what that you do, and a lot about the why, and those are certainly important. Don't get me wrong. But your who is everything. The who in your life will be the single greatest determining factor in your long-term success. So first and foremost, I'm guessing part of the reason why you've been so successful, Todd, in building what you've built is because you have so much of an emphasis that you understand the value and the importance of people. that's everything for you. And so you have an intentional focus on it. That's number one before anything else. At a foundational level, you have to have the mindset that this is so vital for my success. The other thing too, and I think from a place that makes it an attractive place to work, is that the leader can really set the tone and set the pace. They're the emotional thermostat for their team. And so are you the type of person that is attracting the top talent? What you put out, is that, are you a magnet, right? Are you a talent scout? Are you the type of person that people want to come and speak with? And I talk with a lot of friends as they're considering making career moves. I feel like this has come up a lot over the past few years for me based on what I do. And they'll say, can you help me analyze if I should make this jump to this company or leave or do what I should do? And inevitably what comes up is they come back to me and talk about the leadership that they've met at the company they're considering going to, what they're like, the type of questions they ask. Are they good listeners? Are they developing a culture where people want to show up, where you can feel the energy, the positive energy from the other people at the place, right? That all stems from you, Todd, right? That all stems from the leader. It starts up top. And if you're not leading the way first, then it's not going to attract the next level of leaders. And if you don't get this level right, then you think this level is going to be right below? Of course not. And then below? Of course not. So when it starts right here with you, your front level executives or your director team or whatever they're called, I'm guessing they are the type of people that are attracting others, and they're attracted because of you. So I think that's the mindset I try to think of when working to build an effective team. If the top leader is a dud or not somebody that people want to follow, good luck, man. Like, good luck. It's going to be really tough, but it starts with that person and the qualities that other high level people want to be around. That's what it's all about, in my opinion, initially at least.
Yeah, no, you're preaching here, because you think about it and you talk about it in your book. You got to lead yourself first. And I always say this is like, if I'm stale, my team will be stale. My clients and members will be stale. If I'm bored, if I'm frustrated, if I'm not leading right, guess what? Then my organization is going to falter. I always say this is, where you are today in your business is where you were 6 months ago. So if 6 months ago you're really going through tough times and you're bored and you're not doing a good job with your service for us training, guess what? It's going to show up in the P&L 6 months later. So we can't afford that. We can't afford to have unhealthy habits and not having the discipline to do the things that allow you to thrive at the next level. So ultimately, a leader of one, a leader of many. You can't lead one, you can't lead any. You got to lead yourself, and that allows you to then attract. Because I always say, people are like, how do you get great people? I don't think you get great people. I think you attract good people. There's good people out there, and I think it's a leader's responsibility to then help lead them to greatness, to help do the little things and give them those things, which we'll talk about. You say something about culture, because obviously with culture in a business, I've for 20 years having Fitness Quest 10, I think it's crucial. You have a quote in your book: your presence is required. Your presence is required. Talk to me about what that means.
So that stems from a question that is asked of my dad and my mom quite frequently, which is how to raise kids to go on and earn scholarships or play in the NFL. And that's asked of my dad actually a lot. And one of the things that his responses, because so it's really a parenting thing that then flows into the business world, where he would say, I feel like a huge portion of what it was simply showing up. When even if you work a 10, 12-hour day, if your kid asks you to go throw a ball in the backyard, you say yes. If you need someone to rebound his free throws, you say yes. If you need someone to put the coins in the batting cage machine, you say yes. If you need someone to lift weights with him, you say yes. And he'd always tell me, instead of just giving presents, as in like the Christmas presents, your presence is much more valuable for your kids, and your presence is much more valuable for your people. So be with your people. So if you're a national sales vice president like I was, and your team is located all over the country, then don't sign up for that job unless you're willing to get on a lot of airplanes and be with them. If your team is located in the cubicles outside of your office, don't be chained to your desk on conference calls and looking at email all the time. Be with your team, be with your people. He told me when I first got promoted, look, you're going to get inundated with meeting requests, and they're going to try to get you to go everywhere. Remember, priority one, your people, your team. Be with your team. That's not micromanagement. That's called being a leader. It's called being with your team. Your presence is required. And so while certainly I want to hire empower people that don't need me over their shoulder. Part of my job, though, is to be there, is to be a presence for them. And so that's why the phrase we use is your presence is required, whether it's at home as a dad or a mom, or at the office with the team that you're leading.
This is huge. This is, by the way, Ryan, probably my biggest struggle when it comes to leadership. I always say this.
Why is that?
Well, because here's why. Because like everybody else, I'm busy as heck. So here's what happens. I always talk about leadership is probably the most difficult thing I do outside of parenting, right? Why? Because all of us have agendas. I have an agenda every day, and I'm working on projects. I'm working on a writing project, my book's coming out, and a lot of times going into that. And this podcast, you've got projects. At the same time, we've got 42 teammates that need some time, love, and energy. So the battle I'm always with is, how do I be a great leader? How do I lead my team? Of course, one is attracting, hiring, and keeping the best people. But then it's like, I have to consciously get my butt up out of this chair and go out and give attaboys and attagirls and give praise and acknowledgement. Because it's really easy for me to sit behind a desk and write, or go home to my home office and write, which, by the way, twice a week, I've now scheduled like chunks of time where I'm not here, because the only way I get stuff done on the project side is away from here. But in leading, it's that constant back and forth of you're dealing with human beings, and they all have their own set of challenges, issues, possibilities, opportunities, and growth. So it's that constant balance of being the cheerleader, being the person who gives feedback and gives praise and acknowledgement, but sometimes you've got to give some tough love as well. So I think this is a really good topic, because sometimes people think when you have a successful organization, oh, it's just always honky-dory and it's all peaches and cream. And I think that's the furthest thing from the truth. I think great leaders every single day have to face some challenges and have difficult conversations and have discussions with some of their teammates that, hey, you've got another level in you, and I'm going to stretch you. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to give you an opportunity, but you're going to have to rebound, because if you say you want more opportunity, more growth, more money, more responsibility, then I'm going to stretch you, right? So I think this is awesome stuff, because it's something that any leader, I don't care what organization, what occupation, if you're a leader and you aspire for more, man, it's all about having the right people around you, and then ultimately giving that push-pull relationship, so ultimately you can influence them and grow them to be better people.
It's 100% true, man. And also remember, each person is unique in their own right, and they also have real life happening. I mean, the opening story that I tell is about that very fact. I'm 27. I have a 43-year-old mom come in on my third day as a manager and tell me that her husband cheated on her and he wants a divorce, and she wants advice from me, somebody who's almost half her age, who has no clue what in the world is going on in the world. And she wants advice from me. But I remember my dad, I asked him, I said, what am I supposed to do here? And he goes, welcome to management. Welcome to management. I mean, that's kind of how the title came of the book, because these are the types of things that happen when you decide to raise your hand and say, yes, I want that job. Instead of just being responsible for your success, you're now responsible for the success of your team. And those teams are made up of individuals. And how can you as a leader impact each of those individuals at their level with them in that moment when they come in crying, telling you that story? Instead of thinking like, why are you doing this? You're thinking, how can I help? What can I do? Even if I am certainly not qualified to be that person of help, but in that moment, you have to do what you can in order to help your people.
What's your vernacular of manager versus leader? Do you use those words interchangeably, manager versus leader, or do you tend to use manager more or leader more?
Well, I think you can clearly define each one. There are differences. There's different definitions. I think if you want me to get into that, I say leadership to me is you hear the words like vision and providing purpose, direction, aligning expectations, and inspiration. Management, I think, is if there are constraints within your place of work and figuring out how to best maneuver within those constraints, understanding the analytics, the numbers, the business side of the role. When I got my first job, I said, I'm just going to do the first. I'm just going to be the inspirational guy to tell stories, to rally the troops, and to go take the hill. And really, though, that's being just average at the job. You also have to be the one who has an understanding of the stewardship of the resources within the place that you work. I think it's really about leading, managing, and coaching. So they're all three a little bit different, but they all make up that role if you are responsible for being what people would call as the boss of that team or running that business. Is that you're going to have moments where you're strictly in the leadership mode of visioning and expectation aligning, communication effectively versus, okay, let me understand the back end of this business, the analytics, the metrics, what matter most. And then also the coaching sessions where sometimes those can be long form, one-on-one formal meetings, or the informal micro coaching moments where maybe you see a person who needs something just tweaked a little bit and you go have a 5-minute conversation, and those can have a big impact as well. So I would say that all those though make up part of the job of being in charge of a group or a team.
And obviously in the corporate structure, there are quote managers and general managers and assistant GMs. Do you believe that everyone in an organization or in a business or on a team is a leader?
I think everyone has the capability to learn to lead, but certainly that has nothing to do with titles or positions. I think you can lead and create influence from anywhere in any position in any company. I've seen it, I've lived it, I've done it. No, just because you get the title of managing director or CEO or regional sales manager, as a title I've had in my past, that doesn't make you a leader. What makes you a leader are your actions, your behavior, and actually what makes you a leader is anyone following. Are your behaviors or your actions creating the reason or the desire for other people to want to follow? And if you have a title but none of that is happening, then I wouldn't necessarily call you a leader. I would just say you have a title.
Right.
Versus there are also people who have no titles but their behaviors create followers. Those people are certainly leaders.
I believe anyone listening in today, regardless of your title at a company, at an organization, I believe that you have the opportunity to leading yourself, leading your organization, whether it be as a trainer, as a coach, as a physician, as a police officer. Like, how do you lead within your department? What is it that you're doing on a positive basis every single day? On a team, are you a positive influence on your team, or are you a negative influence on your team? I know at Fitness Quest 10, I take great pride in the fact that, there's no gossip rule. We don't want people gossiping about each other, clients, members. We want to make sure that we're lifting each other up, and we're holding these core values at like a high standard, because we can't be like everybody else. And I just want you to know that you're listening in today and your title isn't one that is a manager or a leader. Just know this, is that as you continue to work on yourself and grow your leadership abilities, that your opportunities will abound as you continue to get experience in the work world. So keep firing away and keep leading. I think it's an important role for anyone listening in today. Ryan, I want to talk hiring, firing, because you have it in your book. Everyone loves to hire. Everyone hates to fire. So talk to me about hiring and talk to me about firing, and which of the two is more important?
Well, they're both obviously important. I would say though, one of the things I've worked with companies on that I'm surprised from time to time, even successful ones, is that they haven't always fully identified the qualities and behaviors they're looking for in people. So I think first and foremost, and as a new manager, I didn't either. I just got, I remember an email forwarded to me from another manager that said, just ask these questions in the interview, and if they do well, hire them, even though we didn't define what doing well meant or define what are we actually looking for in somebody to bring onto our team. So first, you got to get clear on what do you value, what do you care about, what do you want, right? So you first get clear on that, then understand how do we design an interview process to make sure that we are identifying if they possess the qualities and their behaviors are those of the types of people that we want to bring onto the team. So that's the hiring side, and we could talk for an hour and a half about just that. When it comes to firing, my one rule is that it should never be a surprise. So no one should. So that means that you're having clear, open lines of vividly clear communication with the person if they are struggling, if they are not doing well, and you've put a plan together in place. Both of you have say into what that plan is, and yet they still cannot get on board or can't perform at the level they need to. You set clear guidelines to say if we're not tracking properly by certain dates, then we do have to make a change. And so when you do have to, unfortunately, fire somebody, which if you're a leader for long enough, you're going to have to do it. It's just one of the downsides of the job. I say just be vividly clear, open lines of communication, and it should never be a surprise. And likewise, if someone cheats or steals, they may be surprised that you found out or that you caught them, but they are not surprised they get fired, because if you cheat or steal, you get fired with no exception. So I think that's the one rule I tried to abide by. I haven't always done it right, but I've tried really hard just to be very clear with people along the way. If we're not doing what needs to be done and we have clear objectives and they're not hitting the objectives, but with that said, Todd, as you know, whenever you have to fire somebody, it feels like a failure in leadership, because you haven't figured out a way how to help that person achieve those objectives that you set. And so that's why firing is such a horrible feeling, because it's a failure of leadership, and it's also a failure of that person, and it impacts not just that person but the people that love that person. And so it can impact lives. And that's when I've gotten into real trouble, when I've let certain underperforming behaviors go, because I thought about the people that employee supported outside of work. And that's why life is messy and life is gray and it's really hard. But it is an unfortunate part of being in a leadership position, and is that if you do it long enough, you will have to make changes from time to time.
Mm. And why is it always that when you do that, you finally pull the trigger? First off, most people don't do it quick enough, but when they do it, it's after the fact that you find out all the junk that you wish you would have known 6 months ago that would have actually pulled the trigger sooner. You're like, man, why didn't you tell me all this stuff? I didn't know this was going on? Because they didn't want to tell the leader behind their back of what the heck was being said or done. So I always find that a paradox.
Always.
I
feel like always you never do it, and they're like, oh, why do you fire them? You shouldn't have. It always is, you should have done it sooner. And
right.
and so does every company in business has processes, so you got to follow your process, and some have human resources and you got to work with them. So obviously in whoever's listening in their line of work, you got to do that. But I feel like that's been the commonality among unfortunate determinations, is that typically you should have done it sooner.
Talking about the high performers paradox, you mention it in the book, and I think it's a great just thought process of when I always say you try to hire more thoroughbreds. That's the language I use, is you hire more thoroughbreds and less donkeys. You don't want a bunch of donkeys on your team because they're not going to perform. What's the high performers paradox?
So I take a lot of pride and I've taken pride in being a place where people can go that will not only be high performers in their role, but also achieve their goals in their personal career. And so the reason why it's the paradox is because sometimes the best move for your high performers is to leave your team for a promotion. And sometimes it's even to leave your company for a promotion. I'm a long game player. I've always thought I'm going to play the long game. And if you play the long game, things will work themselves out. But when I was a high performer, I remember that I never wanted to be held back. If I wanted to be in leadership positions, and if my boss would have held me down, and I've seen this happen in the corporate world, that would not have gone well. And so I always wanted to find ways to help people who desired to grow into management or leadership roles, to help them do that. And I wanted to be known as a place where people went to achieve their goals, where while they were on the team, they were going to be an excellent overperformer. And part of what I was going to do was to help prepare them for the next step in their career. And so I also noticed this helped me a lot when it came to hiring, because our team became known as a place where you went, that if you performed, I would help them get big jobs. And so while in the short term it was painful to lose the top reps in my company, and this happened many times, it seemed to always work itself out because the next highest performer was raising their hand and finding their way to your team.
Mm.
And Bill Walsh did this a lot with the San Francisco 49ers, that he personally would make phone calls to general managers of other NFL teams, and he would say, this assistant coach is now ready to be a head coach. You should hire him. And so that's why his coaching tree is still going on to this day, even though he hasn't coached in a long time, because he prided himself on being a place where people went to prepare to get ready to be a head coach. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that I still look around and see people that I've had on my teams are now in big leadership roles at various companies all over the country. And that's why it's a paradox, though, because you'd have those hard moments where your top performer who was really producing for you was now no longer on your team. And that is really challenging in the short term, but long term, it seemed to be a huge benefit for my team when it came to recruiting.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a great topic because I've heard before on that, Ryan, and I say this, I always say, the more you grow, the further you go. But then I hear leaders say, well, why would I grow my team? Because if I grow my team, then they might grow so much that they leave me.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's stinking thinking. That's a real, fixed mindset, because let's say someone's with you 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever it is, the time that they're with your organization, if they are of growth mindset, think about the impact they're going to have for your organization in that 5 to 10 years they're with you, growing and impacting your clients, members, customers, whoever it may be, versus just staying, stagnant, mediocre, average thinking, which we don't stand for. So I'm like, you have to grow your people. And yes, they may eventually grow outside of your organization, but hopefully if you're leading right, hopefully there can be some opportunities that grow within your organization so that your business can continue to grow as well. Now that's a state of abundance. That's a state of, hey, how can I manifest the dream to continue propelling people up? And I know I've taken great pride in 20 years. We have several people on our team who've been with us for over 15 years. And I think one of the ways that's only been that way is because of you're trying to constantly cultivate growth opportunities for them. And there have been instances in my career where I couldn't grow them anymore, and it was time for them to, spread their wings and fly. But personally, it's always like, I want to grow them within our organization. I want to continue to grow our business and I think that's something as a leader, it's like lead, follow, or get out of the way. You can only go as far as you grow. You can only go as far as you grow. So leaders out there, remember, you've got to grow your team. It's your responsibility to grow your team. And if you're not, you're going to get your tail kicked because someone down the street is going to be growing their team and they're going to beat you to the punch. They're going to be ahead of you. They're more nimble than you. They're responding quicker to the needs of the culture or the service that's requested. So I think that's awesome on that. So thank you for that insight.
That's good stuff.
No, that's when you talk about that paradox, it's the high performance mindset and how do you develop those high performance habits. And I'll finish with this. When it comes to leadership, we talked about it earlier on. You've got to be a great leader for yourself. You've got to have the habits personally to make sure you keep leading your team. Share with me about that, your final thoughts on leading yourself. Great leaders need to lead yourself. You talk about this in your book, Leading Yourself. What would be 1 or 2 key points that you would say anyone who desires to be a leader or is a leader, what can or should they do to continue leading themselves at a very high level?
Well, first, as you said, that is so true. Is you can't even think about being an effective leader for other people unless you're first doing it for yourself. And so that's not being selfish. That's just that's the right order of things. And one of the parts that I really focus on to how I lead myself that I think others could do is having a mindset as becoming a learning machine. I think if I am the type of person who is going to lead myself by being a constant evolving learner, that could impact other people eventually. And so when they look and see me always striving to stretch the zone of both comfort and competency and my knowledge base, that seems to make others want to follow because they realize I'm probably going to be more knowledgeable tomorrow than I was today. I'm going to be more knowledgeable next week than I was this week. I'm going to be in a better position to lead myself and lead others next year than I am now. Today should be the worst that I'll ever be moving forward. And that sounds daunting and sometimes weird when you say it, but really if you're in a constant state of learning and growing and improving, people feel more comfort following somebody like that, who they know is putting in the reps and putting in the time working on themselves, that they'll be better moving forward. And those are the types of people that others seem to raise their hand and say, I want to follow her, or I want to follow him, because I see the growth in that person, and that gives me confidence as someone that I want to get behind.
That's awesome. Ryan, I so appreciate your time and what you're doing on an everyday basis. And congratulations, guys. Read the book. It's called Welcome to Management, How to Grow from Top Performer to Excellent Leader. Ryan, if someone wants to follow you, listen to you on your podcast, can you please provide them with all the information they need?
Sure. So my website's learningleader.com. That's the name of my podcast, which is the Learning Leader Show. And if you're on your phone right now, you can text the word learners with an S, learners, to 44222. And if you're on social media, I'm at RyanHawk12 on all social media, Twitter, Instagram.
Follow him. You talk about leadership. I think leadership is something that we're every single day. We've got to lead ourselves. We've got to lead our people, our families, lead our teams, lead our organizations, whatever your role is. And if you're just starting out in your career, congratulations. Lead with fire, lead with energy, lead with passion. And if you've been in your career for 30 plus years, then lead with passion, lead with fire, lead with energy, because it's something that never, ever ends. And the world is looking for great leaders. The world needs more great leaders. Can I say that again? Can I get a few amens out there? The world needs more great leaders. So Ryan Hawk, thank you for what you do. Thank you for creating and making better leaders every single day. And I know this created great value for our listeners today. So thanks so much for having you on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Todd. I love your energy. It's contagious, man, as you know, but I'm very appreciative of being with you today, man.
I call that contagiasm. It's called contagious enthusiasm. And I do believe that all leaders have contagiasm, either positive or negative. You don't want to be negative. You want to be positive. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much, Ryan, for being here. Folks, go out there and spread the gospel here, and keep leading in all that you do. Peace and God bless. Thank you, Ryan Hawk, for that great interview on leadership. Folks, leadership is extremely difficult for many people. It's something that we have to continually strive to be better at. Why? Because we're dealing with human beings. And human beings have ups and they have downs. They have great days and they have bad days. There are days when they're optimistic. There are days when they're pessimistic. But my ask of you today is that you increase the vibrance, the vitality, the energy, the positivity in you so you can influence and lead people every single day. You know, the great coach John Wooden, perhaps the greatest coach of all time, UCLA, 10 national championships, he would start every season with the same lesson: how to put your socks on. Because he wanted his players to learn how crucial, seemingly trivial details could be. Coach Wolf, Coach Lombardi used to come out and say, "Boys, this is a football." Like very basic things. Leaders, you got to have your fundamentals intact, the fundamentals to winning in games, winning in business, winning in organizations, and winning in life. Doing the things you need to do every single day, dialing into your core values. What are your core values? Define them. When it comes to attracting great people to your organization, who are you attracting and how are you attracting them? When it comes to hiring them, are you asking them questions that are really not just about your business, but about them as people, about humans and how they care and their authenticity and how genuine they are, and why are they wrapped up in the mission and vision of your company? What is the mission and vision that you exist to do in the world? For us, it's to transform the bodies, minds, and souls of people every day so we can impact 10 million people. That's why I do this podcast, right? So when you attract people, when you work with people on your team, you got to make sure they're mission and vision centered as well, and they wrap around a vision bigger than just themselves. And then lastly, it's about keeping the right people on your team so that ultimately you can have that camaraderie, that accountability, and that band of brotherhood or sisterhood that's going to allow you to ultimately create impact. So think about in your own lives, in your own businesses, what you do every single day of being a better leader. And that starts with you, and that starts with your habits. So go out there and get Ryan's book. I think it's a great asset for you. Welcome to Management, How to Grow from Top Performer to Excellent Leader. I have several previous podcasts on leadership. Go back and listen to them. And if you enjoyed today's episode, can you do me a favor? Spend, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and just hitting a quick share. Share it with your social media. Put it on your email. Share it with a teammate, or maybe even a leader that needs to hear this. Maybe you have a leader that's like, man, he or she could really glean some great motivation and leadership tips out of this. Then say, hey, I've got a great podcast episode today from my man TD, who's going to help us get our minds right. If you do that, guess what? Then your organization just got better. My friends, thanks so much for every single thing you do. I read every comment that you're hitting me with, so keep them coming. It certainly fills my heart up and my mind up with love, knowing that you're consuming this content and doing great things in the world. So go out there, get your mind right, train hard today, and don't forget to be a great leader. Peace. I love you guys. Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by my friends over at Carnosine beta-alanine. Let me ask you a question. Who's looking to amp up your workout routine, your training routine? You want to get stronger, faster, more explosive? You want to improve your endurance? Well, my friends, Carnosine beta-alanine is an ingredient found with many of the top pre- and post-workout supplements. Along with the right training program and the proper nutrition, you got to eat right. Carnosine beta-alanine is going to help build your strength, endurance, and your power. How do you do it? Well, essentially 3.2 grams a day. You want to essentially get 90 grams over a 28-day period, about 3.2 grams per day, and you're going to love the way you feel on it. I've been using it for over 20 years, literally on my workout days, on my non-workout days, and I endorse it heavily with my athletes. Why? Because when you're looking for the edge and when you expect the best out of your body, you got to make sure you eat right, you train hard, you're constantly living inspired. And my friends over at Carnosine beta-alanine have the best product on the planet. Over 55 independent studies show that it has 0 banned substances. That's an important thing. You always want to put the right stuff in your bodies. Go to team.carnosine.com. Check it out in the Find It section. You go to your local health food store, or just go to team.carnosine.com and pick some up today.